There's a story told about Cyrus, the king of Persia, who had just captured a rebel chieftain named Cagular, and he was about to execute him. But just before he executed Cagular, he asked him this question. He said, "If I were to save your life, what would you do?" And this was the response of Cagular. He said, "King, I would serve you the rest of my days." Isn't this the response that we would expect from someone whose life had been spared? I mean, if I were drowning in the sea and you jumped into the ocean to save me, risking your own life to save mine, I would never forget it. I would always feel absolutely indebted to you. But my friend, Jesus not only saved us, he sacrificed himself in the process. That crown of thorns upon his head, the stripes on his back, the nails in his hands and his feet, it was all for you. He did that for you. How can we not feel indebted to him? Maybe that's why in Romans chapter 1, verse 14 and 15, Paul said this. He said, "I am a debtor, both to the Greeks and the barbarians, both to the wise and the unwise. So as much as in me is, I am ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also." You see, Paul saw himself as one who had been shown great mercy by God, and that made him a debtor to the rest of mankind. So for him to preach the gospel to the Gentiles, he didn't see it as some charitable gift. It was the only appropriate response that he could have to the amazing grace that had been shown to him by God. Paul realized that he had been saved for a purpose. He had been saved to serve. Somebody once told me, "I don't have a burden for any particular nation." I think that they felt like this disqualified them or perhaps excused them from ministry. But actually, that's not the point. The question is, do you love Jesus? Because at the end of the day, if the burden we feel for people is our sole motivation for preaching the gospel or serving the Lord, then it's just another form of humanism anyway. You know, after Jesus had risen from the dead, he found Peter went back to his old occupation, fishing. And after cooking breakfast for Peter, Jesus pointed to one of the fish, and this is what he said, "Simon Peter, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" And Peter said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." I want you to notice something. Jesus didn't say, "Peter, do you love my sheep? Then feed my sheep." No, he said, "Peter, do you love me?" You see, Peter's ministry to the sheep was to be motivated primarily by his love for Christ, not by his love for the sheep. So here's the question. Do you love Jesus? That's the real question. And my friend, that should be enough to make us want to pour out our lives in service before our King. It's this ambition of love for Christ that reigns supreme over all others, including the desire to advance the kingdom of God or edify the people of God or even to reach a lost and dying world. The first and finest motivation that anyone can have is just the love of Jesus in their hearts. Love for the one who loved us so much that he poured out his own tears and blood and life to save us. My friend, when we receive his gift of life, which cost Jesus everything, how can we spend it in the pursuit of our own ambitions and lusts and gratification? Make no mistake about it, my friend. A life poured out before the Lord is not a waste. It is our only reasonable service. We have been saved to serve.
The Vietnam War was the longest in U.S. history. Many young American men were deployed to serve there, and over 58,000 of them lost their lives. But let me tell you the story of how one life was saved. An American soldier in the Vietnam War was about to step on an anti-personnel landmine that was hidden from his sight. His comrade across the battlefield, who could see the impending disaster from his vantage point, stood up from behind his protective barricade and shouted a life-saving warning to his friend. At that moment, the brave young man received a gunshot that ended his life. A couple of years later, at an honorary memorial service in the United States, the soldier whose life had been saved from the landmine had a chance to meet the wife and son of his deceased friend. The son, who was only 7 years old, had never gotten a chance to really know his father. The soldier could tell that the boy's heart was broken, so he knelt down next to him and put his hand on the child's shoulder. "I want you to know," the soldier said, "your father saved my life." The little boy looked up at him with tears streaming down his cheeks. "Sir," he said, "were you worth it?"
Leonard Ravenhill once asked this question: is what you're living for worth Christ dying for? My friend, we were not saved so that we could be polished, decorative knickknacks sitting on God's shelf, filling space in heaven for eternity. We have been saved for a purpose in this world. And our response to that call, our wholehearted giving of ourselves, is the only acceptable reaction that we could have to the mercy we've been shown by God. My friend, in light of these things, what should we do? Maybe you feel a desire to respond by offering your life as a rocket booster to propel God's kingdom forward, but you're not sure where to begin. When Saul, who later became the Apostle Paul, met the Lord on the road to Damascus, this is what Paul said: "Lord, what do you want me to do?" And this is where our journey begins, with a simple question. The question is not, what do I want to do with my life? But Lord, what do you want me to do with my life?